Warning: this episode contains content that may not be suitable for some listeners, including discussions of drug trafficking, domestic violence, murder, which was ultimately deemed as ritualistic sacrifices, and cannibalism. Listener discretion is strongly advised.
Dark world of ritualistic child abuse.
Witchcraft.
They would sacrifice animals.
Does it make you want to hate murder, or does it make you want to do murder?
Let's explore the darkness of mankind, one crime at a time. Welcome back to Rogue Darkness, the podcast that uncovers how the misinterpretations and misinformation surrounding witchcraft, the occult, and other beliefs have led many to do unthinkable crimes. From ritualistic killings and the demons that live in all of us, to exploration of the macabre and delving deep into the unknown. Let's explore the darkness of mankind, one crime at a time. I'm your host of The Grim and Gruesome, Raven. Let's go rogue and get right into today's chilling crime. The case of a couple from Moscow, Russia, who were caught in a connection to two cold-blooded murders, ultimately presumed to be ritualistic sacrifices to Satan. And as a quick disclaimer, based on many of my previous episodes, as well as my recent interview with Fidelis from the Satanic Stoic Philosophy, the term Satanism is often many times thrown around unnecessarily, and in regards to the specific crime we'll be discussing, the people involved would much more likely fall under the term devil worshippers, as they appeared to have believed in an actual entity to which they performed the heinous acts in the name of. So with that little clarification out of the way, let's delve right into the case. But first, let's start off from the very beginning. At the young age of just 14 years old, Olga Bolshakova from Moscow, Russia was heavily immersed in the world of Satanism, the ideas of black magic, and involvement in satanic cults. She was referred to by those who knew her as being a bad influence and had quite the negative reputation, as, along with involvement in the taboo views of Satanism, she had also started using illegal substances at 14, and then reportedly moved up to the harder drugs once she hit age 16. Olga ended up meeting Andrei Tregubenko in 2015 at a meeting of the League of Darkness Club, where they quickly bonded over their similar interests in Satanism, as well as being part of their local satanic sect, which they referred to as a religious and mystical movement of Satan worshippers, which evidently involved human sacrificial rituals. The two ended up getting married shortly thereafter, and then eventually had 2 young children. All the while, their desire for human blood and performing human sacrifices never subsided. Their macabre fantasy of bloodlust quickly evolved into a reality in June of 2016, when they ended up luring their first sacrificial victim, now reported as being a 27-year-old Victoria Zaitseva, into a forest in the northern Russian Republic of Karelia, where they brutally stabbed her. Victoria unfortunately died after the horrific attack due to the barbarity of the stab wounds. It later came to light that Victoria was reportedly in love with Andrei, infatuated with him even, which was likely what aided in luring her into the forest, a misperceived sense of trust and comfort that would unfortunately lead to her demise. Victoria had reportedly been involved in the same satanic sect that both Andrei and Olga were affiliated with, so that too likely had a large play on the amount of trust she placed on him. A few months after Victoria's murder, in August of 2016, the couple mercilessly struck again, this time claiming one of Olga's longtime acquaintances, later reported to be Platon Stepanov. Olga and Andrei reportedly met with Platon in a town north of St. Petersburg, where they then proceeded to savagely beat him, and just as they had done with Victoria, they then brutally stabbed him with a knife, ultimately killing him. These brutal, ritualistic sacrifices were not what brought the duo into the hands of the law, though. Rather, they were originally arrested for a drug offense, and even drug trafficking. When brought into custody on the drug charges, they both reportedly confessed to the 2 murders, while also claiming that they had dismembered and even cannibalized both of their victims' bodies as part of their ritualistic practices. Local Russian media outlets claimed that both Victoria and Platon had also been involved in black magic, and were aware that they would be involved in a human sacrifice, Yet they didn't know at the time that they would ultimately be the sacrifice themselves. They both trusted Andrei and Olga, but due to the maliciousness and deceitfulness of the duo, Victoria and Platon unfortunately ended up being sacrificed and then eaten by the cannibalistic murderers. Upon their arrest, both Olga and Andrei proceeded to blame each other for the crimes, stating that the other was the perpetrator and instigated the murders. According to Andrei's sister Nesia, who is currently the caretaker for the duo's 2 young daughters, prior to meeting Olga, Andrei was referred to as a typical biker who never appeared to be actively involved in Satanism until he met Olga. This leads to the notion that her negative reputation was in fact true. On the other hand, Olga made claims that it was actually Andrei who was the instigator, and that he had initially gotten her addicted to drugs, as he was dealing drugs as a means to keep their family afloat, as they were both unemployed at the time. Olga also went on to claim that Andrei would beat her on a regular basis, further trying to portray him as the prime instigator of the crimes, and even as an abuser. The claims of domestic abuse was never proven though, and leaves us to wonder if they ever actually happened, or if it was just a ploy to try and take the focus off of her own involvement in the murders. Domestic abuse is horrible, but at the very least, if we try to look at the bright side, if Andrei did ever get abusive with Olga, at least they are both separated from each other in prison and he can no longer harm her. But we may never truly know the truth of it. Both Andrei and Olga ultimately agreed to cooperate with the authorities, but they both continued to blame each other for the murder. I was unable to find any current, updated information regarding the full investigation, their trial, and their ultimate incarceration, as well as their current status, but it's likely safe to say that the duo are still currently serving time in prison for their involvement in drug trafficking, as well as their admission of involvement in the gruesome murders of Victoria Zaitseva and Platon Stepanov. So that was the disturbing case of Olga Bolshakova and Andrei Tregubenko, and how they mercilessly took 2 innocent lives as a means to feed their misinformed views and practices under the label of Satanism. Let me know your thoughts on this case, and if you have any questions regarding it or any other cases I've covered previously, feel free to contact me at roguedarknesspod@gmail.com. You can also reach me directly on Instagram or Twitter at rogue_darkness. I'm always interested in hearing your thoughts on cases I've covered, as well as hear any suggestions you may have for future ones. As always, if you like what you hear on Rogue Darkness, be sure to spread the word by sharing it with your family, friends, or anyone else who you think might enjoy it. Also be sure to leave a rating and review on Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever else you can leave a review to let other listeners know you enjoy the pod. By rating, reviewing, subscribing, and sharing, you are directly helping the show out, and it's always greatly appreciated. And if you're looking for more ways to support the show, I do have a Patreon page set up at patreon.com/roguedarkness. There's only one tier, a flat monthly rate of just $5 a month, where you'll get access to bonus monthly content, live shows, exclusive giveaways, shoutouts, and much, much more. For a little less than a venti Starbucks coffee, you'll have even more Rogue Darkness in your life every month, so you definitely don't want to miss out on that. And if you're not already, be sure to follow me on all of my socials, Instagram and Twitter, as well as my YouTube if you want to see the episodes in video format. And if you're looking to deck yourself out in some awesome style, then definitely take a look around my Bonfire merch store. Links to everything from my socials and Bonfire shop to all of the articles referenced in the show are all in the description box for your reference. Be sure to stay tuned after the outro music to hear a short promo for one of my fellow podcasters, Southern Haunts. I absolutely love Southern Haunts, and host Ashley has such a beautiful way of telling creepy stories and giving them that little extra eeriness. So I know you'll enjoy her pod just as much as I do. And with that said, that concludes this week's episode of Rogue Darkness. The darkness is all around us, and I can confidently say that reality truly is more terrifying than fiction. Until next time.
The South overflows with history and character. From haunted farmhouses to ghostly hotel guests, and cemetery wanderers. There are more than a few urban legends born in the Deep South. I'm Ashley McLaughlin, and I'm going to tell you a scary story each week centered around a spooky happening from south of the Mason-Dixon on Southern Haunts Podcast, where I cover everything from cryptids to true crime. Find Southern Haunts Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.